Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most interesting and amusing stories in the past couple of years is how Mittens Romney, how Mittens not only voted to convict President Trump in 2019 of really an absurd allegation, going after, this is the allegation, strong-arming a foreign leader, even though the president of Ukraine stated there was no leverage, there was no attempt to sway him or to force him to investigate Biden. The hilarious thing, ladies and gentlemen, about all of this is that Biden's son Caligula is being investigated by the United States right now. The federal government is investigating Caligula. And all of the incriminating emails on his laptop that we couldn't talk about, the Politico, they're investigating everything from laundering to the business entities that he worked with. And that was a legitimate story from the New York Post. We couldn't talk about that for a little while. Gee, I wonder why. And that was before all of this. Before the horrendous, just unmitigated disaster last week in Washington. I mean, the loss of life is the main thing. Those 5 people should be alive today. Now they're trying to... Okay, so hit subscribe to this channel. Let's get to 200,000 subscribers. The best thing you could do, ladies and gentlemen, for the next 4 years is tell your friends and family, anybody you know who might enjoy my voice or my take on things. Tell them about this channel. Tell them to subscribe. And I appreciate your support. If you want to help or support my voice long term, my Patreon is below. To my new Patreons, thank you so very, very much. My goodness. Your support, especially in this really interesting time, is extremely, extremely important. My Patreon is below in the pinned comment, the description, and also on my website, hagoodman.com. You can read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Federalist, The Jerusalem Post, and you can see my debates. But the interesting thing about Mitt Romney is that any narrative, any spin, any narrative that Democrats and media level upon, accuse Trump of. So we know now that Trump should never have been impeached. William Barr should have. And Jeff Sessions, the worst attorney general of all time, but William Barr is, he was there for the president sometimes, but he was missing completely other times. William Barr should have notified the world, or somebody like President Trump's legal team or his administration. They've been investigating. There's been an open investigation into Caligula, Biden's son, since 2018. So Politico, over a dozen entities. Let's see. So this is Justice Department interest in Hunter Biden covered more than taxes. Federal prosecutors have been investigating foreign ties, possible money laundering. So how on earth did they impeach President Trump? Lord knows how did they... So this has been going on since 2018. So the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware. And how they kept this under wraps and a secret is unbelievable. They celebrate all the possible investigations into Trump. Oh, this person's going to make Trump's life difficult. See, he's a billionaire. He's a billionaire. Democrats think that he worked with Russia, that he's not a billionaire, that he's a criminal, yet they can never accuse him in a court of law of something. So Mittens chose to convict President Trump in 2019. It's interesting. He chose to convict President Trump. There were 2 articles, none of which in 2019. And he'll do the same thing. That's the whole point of this segment. He'll do the same thing in a couple of months, which is bizarre. He'll be the only Republican to have voted to convict a Republican president twice. Does that make any sense at all? Why is this man a Republican? Why is he a Republican? He should just be a centrist Democrat. Leave it at that. A blue dog Democrat. But so Mitt Romney voted for Article 1, but not Article 2. The interesting thing is The two articles that they impeached President Trump on in 2019 were nonsense. They weren't legal statutes. They did not impeach President Trump in 2019 of breaking the law. Then they said, well, you don't have to. He doesn't have to break the law. Impeachment is a political tool. And then Lawrence Tribe of Harvard, who really doesn't like Trump, said, no, you can convict and indict a sitting president. So it can actually be a law, but they didn't find a law that he broke in 2019. They haven't even found a law that he broke in 2020 or 2021. They're trying to say that his words compelled and incited, and he basically told people to do what they did, which he didn't. There should never have been, here's the issue, there should never have been protests that day. I mean, the whole thing was an unmitigated catastrophe and disaster. My God almighty. There's no direct, he needs to go on a media offensive. He needs to pardon Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. They had nothing to do. Well, Julian Assange was never indicted, nor will he ever be indicted or charged for working with Russia or Russian intelligence agencies or operatives. It never happened. The whole thing was completely fabricated. That's why nobody's ever been charged with conspiring alongside Russian intelligence officials. Not one person. Yet there was supposed to be this elaborate plot against Democrats. Not one individual has ever been charged with working alongside a Russian intelligence official. How is that possible when you had 4 years of Democrats obsessing over tinfoil hat fantasies? Oh man, they had their tinfoil hats going on for 4 years, and then God forbid if you bring up things that they've. I mean, that's one of the obstacles that we need to overcome in terms of politics. But Romney is going to. So he actually voted for abuse of power, which is subjective, but he voted no on. I'm looking at Politico. He voted no on obstruction of Congress because he knows all presidents obstruct Congress. Obstruction of justice. Notice after the Mueller probe, they could have gotten him on obstruction of justice, I thought, but they didn't. Wonder why? Maybe the whole thing was fabricated. So they changed it up and they said obstruction of Congress. And by the way, who's defending the president? Is there anyone? The president, Trump isn't even defending himself. He has 2 days. He has 2 days before Biden and 4 years of Biden. How are we going to regain political influence and power? And simply saying, oh, the country's lost. That's not the mentality. If you watch this channel, I want you to be positive, forward-thinking. We need to focus on political strategy. I'm not a lifelong Republican. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I used to be a lifelong Democrat. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. I used to be the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. But I want a reversal of U.S. foreign policy. I don't want any more regime changes, interventions. I want Americans home from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. President Trump gave that to me as a voter, or he reversed U.S. foreign policy. So for the past 4 years, he was in the process of reversing 16 prior years of failed interventions and regime changes. In addition to, look, how many people know that President Trump allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever, and made that funding permanent? That's one of the reasons President Trump shouldn't have, in hindsight, gone after NFL athletes or LeBron James. He should have created a national dialogue regarding certain topics if he wanted to create that dialogue. Just like there's a very huge, Reagan was the great communicator, and President Trump is good at communicating certain times. He was able to become president because he had a unique form of communication. But that did not, his unique, the sledgehammer approach, the taking the baseball bat and just whacking a hornet's nest and getting liberals and Democrats all apoplectic even more so than they usually are. that only works, that doesn't work all the time. In fact, towards the latter part of his presidency, it didn't really work at all. And where's the national dialogue and debate and discourse? We have none. We have Mittens Romney, who will convict President Trump twice. And we have Trump in in any court of law, the man would be vindicated or defended successfully, because there is no political speech is protected. He actually even used the word peaceful within this speech that was supposed to have, gone into the homing beacon within the minds of, zombie Republicans, or Trump supporters. By the way, those Trump supporters should never have done that. That had nothing to do with Trump. What they did, they sing. Look, the loss of life is the main thing. 5 people should be alive today, but they didn't. There was no political thought or discourse. That there was nothing before what took place. See, that was one of the moves that President Trump made that were just horrendous in recent months. Why have even with the show of people who were unhappy, and I get that, I understand that, but we can't talk about that now. We couldn't even talk about it before, even less now. What was the point? There was no point to having a protest. You didn't even have Republicans on your side. McConnell was quiet. Pence was quiet. And like I said the past couple of weeks, these people are political creatures. They're not just going to be loyal to a cause. Or it's like, at first I said, wait a second, Trump did all these things for the Republican Party. They weren't loyal. I kind of had that mentality. Then I thought, these are political animals. And so Trump didn't play the game, and I get that. That's one of his crowning achievements, but it's also, in a way, a negative. Like, Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, I'm going to continue to say this. These people have been hiding under a rock. Josh Hawley in particular. He's nowhere to be found. He's completely silent. And they're taking advantage. They're no more book deal, Simon Schuster, no more. He should go to other publishers in other countries. Why doesn't he do that? If he can't get a publisher in the U.S., go to a publisher in another country. What's the problem? I'm sure there's another publisher in the U.S. that wants him. Or he's a senator. Or get a publisher in Canada. Something, just so he can show the mob that the frenzied, hysterical, fanatical, the people that just want retribution, the vindictive political operatives that want retribution. There's so many ways that Josh Hawley and President Trump and Ted Cruz and anyone who supported President Trump could defend themselves. They have these platforms. They're sitting senators. So go and find a foreign publisher. Who cares? Find a publisher in Australia. Okay. What are they going to say? Oh, you have a publisher in another country. So now you have a hotel that doesn't want to work with Josh Hawley. Okay, then he needs to find another hotel. But so what? And then you have a whole bunch of law students that want him disbarred. He needs to go on a media offensive. Go on CNN, MSNBC, and don't just say, "Well, Biden's being sworn in, so I don't want to create even more waves. I'll just let it pass." That's not the way. That's not the way to address things. Even President Trump is guilty of running out the clock. I don't want to. It happened. There should have been a national dialogue and discourse and debate. There's no political discourse in this country runs through the lenses of liberal Democrats. That's it. There's no discussion or debate because you have Republicans who are either silent or they're Mitt Romney and they're going to convict Trump twice of crimes that he didn't commit. Okay, he did not. There wasn't even a crime they accused him of in the first impeachment. And with this, he's protected. He wouldn't, in a court of law in this country, he would never have, he had nothing. He didn't tell these people to do what they did. He used the word peaceful. Alan Dershowitz, Jonathan Turley, any objective. Alan Dershowitz is a lifelong liberal. But he's objective. So he's an objective observer. So he's looking and saying, well, he's protected under the First Amendment, under laws protecting political speech. He didn't tell people to do anything. But see, again, perception is everything in Washington. And so when President Trump continually pushed the envelope, it allowed Democrats to essentially erase all his accomplishments. And it gave a platform to people like Mitt Romney and Ben Sasse and others who said, oh, I'm a good Republican. Don't you want a good Republican? Don't you long for the days, Democrats? Yeah, they want Mitt Romney. Why? Because they would have zero problem defeating him in an election. Zero problem. That's why they want him. It's like rooting for a team in the playoffs. You've already gone to the Super Bowl. You already secured the Super Bowl, but you're rooting for the weakest team in the NFC or AFC championship. You don't want the best team to face you in the Super Bowl. So Democrats are and you look today, the NBC News poll, he still has 90% support, Trump, within the Republican Party. So, but the problem, see, they face this, Republican voters face a conundrum or a dilemma. Mitt Romney gets most of the press. The favorable press goes to Mitt Romney and Ben Sasse. 90% of Republicans have shunned both of them, though. Or I should say, not in their home states, but nationally, what they stand for, the image that they evoke, does not resonate with 90% of Republicans. Okay? The sledgehammer, the bulldozer mentality still resonates for good reason. You had Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigning in disgrace in 2016 for a reason. And so with former progressives or former lefties like myself, that resonates. Trump telling it like it is, but also he doesn't always tell it like it is. Sometimes he's a little bit too extreme or pushing the envelope. So whereas, like I said, he shouldn't have gone after NFL athletes. He shouldn't have disparaged LeBron James. It did him no good. It did the country no good. If he disagreed with the anthem protest, there could have been a national dialogue and discourse. You can only present, simple viewpoints. Reagan was good at, communism is good or bad, which it's bad. But what he was able to do is to say, okay, we're still battling the Soviets, and there's two choices. It's either good or bad, So Reagan was good in that sense. But he didn't have a media like today. The American media is an extension of the Democratic Party. They're extensions. There is no more media in this country. We're going to fact check Trump or anyone else, and here's the fact check. Well, we got the opinion of another person, and so therefore it's debunked. That's what a lot of these fact checks now are. It's just, a fact check is the 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers won the World Series. End of story. End of story. That's it. And if you say otherwise, we're going to fact check you if you think the Yankees won. Nope, not in 1955. Sorry. Your fact is, you're wrong. We need to correct you. Not, well, I spoke to somebody and it's true, I spoke to somebody and it's true. Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. Well, some people disagree. Some people say Kareem. Some people say LeBron. Some people say Wilt Chamberlain. Some people say Bill Russell. So you can't fact check an opinion, which is what's taking place nowadays. Okay? But see, again, there's no political discourse. You need to create, if you're a politician and you're trying to, there's a battle of ideas at all times. If you don't have ideas on your side, or if your ideas, let's say President Trump's ideas, which his achievements were monumental. but he was not able to communicate those achievements because of the hysteria surrounding him, and he fed into that. See, 20 minutes in, here's the perfect analogy finally came to me. Trump for 4 years, rightfully, justifiably so, has been complaining about sharks, but he's thrown the chum in the water. You knew there was always he was surrounded by sharks the whole time, but he didn't have to throw a bucket of chum every 2 seconds. It got them into a frenzy like you couldn't believe. And at the end of the day, he's being impeached twice because there was there would never have been goodwill towards him, but now there's an actual frenzy and hysteria where any accomplishments are now erased from history in the minds of these people. And, first president to step foot in North Korea, Abraham Accords, peace between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Serbia, and Kosovo economic deals. So many great these are lasting achievements, by the way. And now nobody's going to remember them. Or I should say, people will remember them forever, but they're not going to give Trump credit. Pence will take the credit, or, unless President Trump, and he'll rebound, but he needs to create a national dialogue. Part of that national dialogue, like I said last night, or in my last segment, is pardoning Julian Assange. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe to this channel. Mittens wants to convict Trump twice. This is absolutely hilarious. Give me your thoughts.